So one of the rules when I first got here was she said, could you please make sure that if people are talking, they push the button, and then I failed to do it myself. So there you go. That's what happens. So it's just acknowledging the mihi and hoping that we're going to have a really positive and constructive hui today. Leo Watson is my name. I had been engaged by the parties to act as an independent facilitator for this process, and it's under that umbrella, if you like, under that maru, that I come with a humble heart to guide us through the discussion today, knowing that this is your house, this is your land, and it's lovely to be amongst it to try and find some positive solutions as you had laid down for us, matua. So I'm going to take a seat. We've got an agenda there. I thought it would be useful in a short time to just introduce ourselves around the table. Most of you will know each other anyway. I think it's useful just if you would indicate who you are and also the particular hat you're wearing today, so that everyone is familiar with who's in the room. I thought it would be good just to have some preliminaries, though, in terms of, as I understand it, health and safety, emergencies and so forth. Just been told, head out there and down to the car park. The toilets are just out here as well. Please push the button if you're going to speak on your microphone. I'll help you with that as well. I understand, if the council can help me, that this procedure has been live streamed, council's requirements. So the discussions we will be having are recorded and can be watched by members of the public. I think that's positive for transparency's sake, but I'm just allowing you all to know that in advance. I don't know if, does that include a camera?
Yes.
Oh, and it's all, you don't have to look somewhere.
No, just be yourself.
Lovely. Mayor and members of the council and Te Tatau, I wonder if it would be useful to do a short mihi. It doesn't matter what order we go around, but perhaps if we go this way, we can end with the new boy on the block. And just want to acknowledge Andrew's reaching out to me a while ago and forming that contact, and hopefully together, that's why I've asked him to be up here too, we can guide the process safely. Can I start with you? Tēnā koe.
Ko Greg Brown, aho. I'm representing council, I guess. I feel like the new boy still, so looking forward to the conversation and just see where we go. What I would say from my perspective, hopefully we land on something that works, and enjoy the process of getting to whatever that looks like. Kia ora.
Morena, Sandra Kaifong, Deputy Mayor, and also on the working party for this process. Thank you.
Morena koutou, Tania Tipsel, Mayor of Rotorua.
Morena tātou. My name's Karen Barker, councillor, and I was on the working group as well. Thank you.
Morena koutou, Fisher Wang, also a councillor.
Morena Kolani Kiriopa, Māori Ward representative.
Tēnā, Kiri Potaka Jews, nā te rangi te arere, I'm the Koeke representative.
Kia ora no tātou, Te Taru White, Hapu representative on tātou o te Arawa, also designated as the mangai on the review process on behalf of tātou o te Arawa, but supported by colleagues around the table. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora tātou, Roku Mihinui, Tuarangi representative on te tātou o te Arawa.
Morena tātou, Te Wai Hotene, Rangatahi representative, Te tātou o te Arawa.
Morena koutou, Trevor Horowaiwai Maxwell, MBA, Maori boy from Oahu, Ngāti Rangiwuhi o te Arawa, Rotorua Lakes Councillor. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Morena e karema. Rāwiri Waru, councillor, elected as one of the Māori Ward councillors and born into Te Arawa. Kia ora.
Morena tātou, James Hamiora,
chairperson of Te Tatau o Te Arawa and also a member of the Working Party. Tēnā tātou.
Morena, did you want to go somewhere else, Leo?
No, I was just going to pick up the two at the back there.
Morena tātou, Jude Pani, the mana hautu of Te Tatau o Te Arawa, and have been involved in the Working Party process supporting Leo and the teams.
Morena tātou, ko new boy ahau, ko Andrew Morais, ko toi hautu o te kaunihera o ngā roto o Rotorua, Chief Executive of Rotorua Lakes Council.
Ka pai. And I've got apologies on the agenda. I think it would be useful just to note any apologies if we can briefly. Sandra.
We have apologies from Councillor Lee, Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Patterson.
And some apologies from Te Tatau members, Rangi Tiria, Mariana, Anaru, Kahuta Peka. Is that it?
Kia ora. So just some parameters for the workshop. There's no right way or wrong way to do this. What was important was that the Working Party mahi and its consideration come back to the council and come back to Te Tatau in a formal way to allow the wider members of your particular rōpū, your particular groups, to consider it openly amongst you all and to perhaps be guided by me as to what I saw as the key issues that need to be addressed to make this a working reality. It is obviously, as I said, part of the public transparency process of the council, but I also wanted to ensure that there's a chance for full and frank discussion. So you can be guided yourselves as to how you want to do that. There was an idea perhaps that we were to break out into maybe little groups depending on the numbers that we've got. I think with the time we've got available, we'll stay as a group like this. It helps to move the hui forward. But importantly, I wanted to stress that the Working Party report, which has been tabled in a draft sense and some feedback provided on that, has gone through to the council, it's gone through to Te Tatau, and it's I asked that those who weren't part of the Working Party engage with it in a manner that is constructive without seeking to necessarily relitigate all of the deep analysis that's gone into the report. In other words, sometimes you can come to a wider forum like this and find that we have to start all over again. So part of my role, I think, is to allow you to have trust in the process that was followed, whereby I can assure you, but also I can be asked about it by you if you've got concerns, that it was really safe, it was really constructive, but I had to make sure that both parties were really hearing each other. And what you've got on that draft report is a synthesis of a fair and balanced view, in my view, of what the parties were seeking to set out. And clearly, they don't always agree, and that's as it should be. But there also has been some really positive points of agreement with a vision to go forward. And so I'm going to just ask for, I guess, a modicum of respect to be given to the work that's gone into that process, and looking primarily at this workshop as to the recommendations there and how to advance them in a way that allows you as councillors and Te Tatau members to engage on that, as opposed to a deep analysis of how did you get to the recommendations. By all means ask those questions and test that, and as opposed to also an over-analysis of what led us to this point. In other words, quite a few meetings we had looking at the history of the parties, the history of the relationship, what went well, what didn't go well, and my encouragement to you all is that we don't need to go into that history in depth, because we're at this point now where there is a collective view from the Working Party that some recommendations could really get this waka haurua on track. So I'll just leave it there and hope that that sense of how I hope that today's workshop would operate will assist us make the most of today. The other procedural point is, as Andrew's mentioned to me, there's no decision being sought from councillors today. And we are going to talk about timeframes, but basically we're looking to have a hui where you feel, and Te Tatau members who haven't been part of the working group, engaged, able to provide your feedback, ask questions, the hard questions as well, and then to allow the working party, hopefully, to receive your approval to do work over the next couple of weeks for terms of reference in detail around some of the recommendations that have been made, with a view to bringing that back to the full council for decision making. I think we're aiming for July. So we're really wanting to keep momentum going, but we can talk about that as the hui unfolds. So I'm not necessarily looking for comment on that. I was going to go into the next part of the agenda item around the summary of the report, but before I do so, are we all good?
Yep. I just wanted to comment that we're happy to follow the wisdom of your words, look to the future. We understand that there has been some mamai in terms of the history. We will need to look to the future and this relationship and how we build that for the benefit of all. And speaking as the māngai for Tatau Te Arawa, that is our position, our starting position today. So looking forward to some productive, progressive commentary on how this partnership can come to be. Kia ora tātou.
Order. Right. And just in terms of timing, I think we finish at 12. Is that right? So yeah, we'll keep it going. So just to reflect, you have an existing partnership agreement from 2015. Part of the task, not the only task, of the Working Party was to look at the details of that and how it's been operating. It's still in effect, and one of the key recommendations from the Working Party, and one that I would really endorse, is that while there are some structural proposals around the relationship, that the partnership agreement in 2015 pretty much stands up. The wording is really strong, the objectives are strong, the principles are there. This is not about really reopening up the basis of the relationship. So I just wanted to start with that because it seemed to me as a facilitator, how was this going to operate? And it was apparent right from the start that the council members on the committee and Te Tatau came with really good faith that they want a relationship, they see value in it, and they want it to work well. So I want to applaud that because sometimes we can rush over that, but that's actually a really important aspect of this. There are some aspects of the 2015 partnership agreement, I think, that the details of the relationship that are worthy of amendment. And part of the work stream would be to look at the proposals that are being discussed today and to come back to the parties with a track changes amended partnership agreement to reflect if those proposals land. And I'm talking, you know, really down in the detail, like how many times per year should a meeting be conducted between certain parties, that type of amendment. But also, of course, there is a proposal around this committee idea, the vision committee idea that I'll be speaking to. And that should require a proper substantive amendment to the partnership agreement if that proposal is to be accepted. So the partnership agreement is there as the whāriki, as the basis for our kōrero, and as I said, there's actually, what I saw, just telling those who weren't part of the Working Party, I saw far more commonality than I saw difference between the parties about the value of the relationship and how to make it work. There was some, I think it's fair to say, some cultural understandings around aspects of what partnership means, and I wanted to reflect, Rawiri, at the very first meeting you referred to the concept of mana orete, and that idea orete, like being equal, and the mana carrying the idea of authority, if you like. So it's been, it's important to put cards on the table. There's been a really important issue to grapple with around the exchange of mana and how authorities in our constitution should be reflected in a relationship like this. So the first thing to say is that Te Tatau have consistently held a position that's expressed to me that you know, the Local Government Act, the constitutional arrangements generally do not reflect what Te Arawa would see as a mana orite position constitutionally. There is a power imbalance. And they also reflect the pragmatics of that. Because part of the process was, well, what are we going to do about that? You can't change the constitution in a review of the partnership agreement. But they laid down that, that concern, that imbalance. And what I heard from, and I want to thank the members of the Working Party for the Council, is that their ears were open to that. And I saw constantly a need to grapple with that, treat it with respect, also deal with the pragmatics of the situation that we're in. The reason I started with that comment is because I didn't want to lose sight of the fact, Taru, you talked about a mamai, there is an underlying imbalance that Te Arawa representatives come to this whole process with, and it's really making the best of that imbalance to achieve the results that you're all looking for.
If I may comment on the issue of mana, Tata o Te Arawa went through a rigorous process in early 2015 to establish the mandate for Tata o Te Arawa to represent their interests on the municipality. We have always taken that seriously as the mana bestowed upon us by Te Arawa. And we've always held the view that Te Arawa will put us in here and Te Arawa will take us away if they saw fit to do so. That is the claim to mana that we have. There'll be those who might speak about, well, do you have the mandate? Yes, we do. It's on record, it's in history. So we come here with the mana of Te Arawa, and I'll proclaim that as we talk around this table, around the municipality. So while there might be other views about that, it is very clear that we are speaking with the mana o Te Arawa in the context of the municipality and their inputs into that. So I just wanted to make that clear so that we can move forward knowing that you are talking to the right entity when it comes to Te Arawa's representation towards the municipality. That does not impugn the hapu out there who have their own relationships with the council, because we've always made it clear that Te Arawa, the Tau Te Arawa is not here to impugn those hapu interests. They're very, very important to us. But collectively, the view of Te Arawa, we're prepared to lay it on the table what the issues are for us. So I wanted to make that clear for our people out there and for the community. And we always believe that that if Te Arawa rises with the tide, then everybody rises with the tide in this community. It is a shared interest. And I say that in the context, and I've said this before, about the resources around here, the longevity of our existence here, our historical presence and our future presence, and not to withstand that. We look at the rangatahi, the growing population of Te Arawa rangatahi in this jurisdiction is huge. So we're always looking for mokopuna future. And I hope that when we work this partnership through, that we'll have solutions that will be not just for this generation, but for generations to come. And I look at our tuahine, our wahine over here, and representing that rangatahi view. And I think that's hugely important for the future of this council, for our place, our people, our culture, and our place. So I just wanted to put that on the table. Kia ora.
Yeah, so that's a really, and it reflected in our discussions too, that Te Tatau, with its mandate from Te Arawa in this context of engagement with the council is critical. That there are specific relationships that the council have with hapu and iwi within the confederation here, through various agreements and through your treaty obligations as well. And that's to be respected by, and it is respected by both parties. So I also wanted to just note the Māori wards and tēnā koutou. And of course you're in a climate of significant change at the moment with the new government, but that's a nuance again. And for those, again, councillors who weren't part of the Working Party, it was really important, part of the terms of reference was to look at the impacts of the Māori wards and the introduction of the Māori wards in terms of the relationship between the council and Te Tatau. And I found the discussion really robust and helpful to see that there are different constituencies, if you like, that are being reflected by the various hats that are being worn. So there's a synergy, but there's also different constituencies. So Te Tatau are reflecting an engagement with the council on behalf of Te Arawa as mana whenua, in conjunction with the other relationships that the council have with hapu and iwi of Te Arawa. The Māori wards, of course, carry that responsibility as well, but are reflecting the views of the Māori community, not necessarily just those who are affiliated as mana whenua in terms of Te Arawa. So there's a I think a benefit, there's an and as opposed to an either or, but it's also been useful in our processes to make sure that how did the Māori wards introduction impact on the relationship, and in particular, positively, when we move forward, how do the Māori ward structures work hand in hand with the strengthened te tatau relationship? Yeah. Is that all right as a summary of Kapai? Next issue is around the council restructuring that occurred with its committees. So of course that was a marked change in the way in which the council operated, and it's, I guess, triggered the reason for this review. Part of that I think is historical, but part of it is to acknowledge what does that new climate as to how you operate mean for the te tatau engagement. And in particular, where there's a proposal here for a committee to be established reflecting that partnership, my interest in a workshop like this is to get a sense of how does it intersect with the existing council committees as a whole. And so that will be a topic that we're going to discuss. But again, not delving into the history of things, simply to note that there was concern around the way in which the restructuring had an impact on te tatau engagement and where it saw itself, and pleasing to see that there is real commonality in the recommendations as to how to address that. So I just wanted to, I suppose, I've dealt with the partnership agreement itself. I wanted to note one other point before we got into the key nub recommendation, and that is, I guess, the vertical engagement idea, whereby while the focus today should, as in front of the councillors, be on matters associated with the recommendation around the committee, nevertheless, it's intended that there be scaffolding all the way through so that vertically te tatau and the council can be seeing each other at each step of the process. And that's just probably so trite as to not have to explain it, but the idea is that by the time you are engaging as rangatira to rangatira, you've already been fully traversing in a transparent way the issues that allow each other to be heard. And that strengthens the idea of mana orite up at the top. So I think the new CEO is a real opportunity. There are recommendations there which don't need to be discussed in detail here, I don't think, but would want to give assurance to the councillors that the idea is that at each point of staff and tiered structure within the council, the working party are recommending the strengthening and regularity of relationships and communication in that way. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, if I may, and I think, as you said at the start, it's probably important to, in the time we've got, focus on some things that have some boundaries in them, and as you rightly said, Leo, just focus on the way forward. And one of the things I think at this governance level, it'd be good to clarify to here is what are the governance structures. The operational level, I think, as council have quite clear guidelines on what is operational and what's governance. I think it's important to let the new CE try and work out operationally what works for him, and that around this table work out at the governance level what the appropriate mechanics of coordinating and working together are, because I think that's also going to be more likely to yield a productive conversation, because that's what you've done the mahi on leading up to this. So I think if we can keep that governance operational discipline, that would be quite useful from my point of view.
Absolutely. Yep. No, I wasn't. So I was just providing a sense of the wider context around how the proposed committee idea would be supported by scaffolding underneath operationally, and absolutely. Jude.
And Te Tatau is absolutely aware of the governance management separation, but I think it's it was really important for Te Tatau to actually include, and going back to the 6 March negotiating points, it was really important for Te Tatau to include what they saw set at operational level, because I think in local government it's really important to make sure that our governors, they get the governance briefing or the report briefing, but for Te Tatau, having line of sight, and for Te Arawa as things progress through that developmental stage is really critical. So I suppose that was Te Tatau's intent in flagging the operational perspective, not to force the governors to force your hand, but to say, hey, don't forget of the importance of things as they track through your organisation when they hit the executive, and we can help. Don't look at it as it being as keep away, we're going to just feed to the governors what we want to get what we want. Actually, Te Tatau can support in that process. That was it. So, kia
ora.
Tautoko that I think it's important that Te Tatau have independent expertise, independent of council operations, and so that's an important part of the conversation.
Yep. It's going to be a marker of success of a structural governance proposal if you, as up in that committee, are confident that it's been well supported by independent and good communication underneath, and so yeah, good comments.
Yeah, tū mana hautu, we totally agree. Tātou will totally support exactly what you're saying.
The other one, but sorry, Mia.
Thank you very much. And probably just a reminder, here at Council, our Chief Executive is employed by us to deliver on the direction of Council. So we would feel quite confident with whatever way our Chief Executive decides to do that, that the operations are working in a way that's going towards the direction of the governance, if I should say. So we're technically the same. There is a purpose of having the independence, because the governors shouldn't be delving into the detail of the operation and telling them how to do it. We wait for the experts to do their thing, to bring it back for us to then make a decision on it. So just wanted to clarify that there is, I suppose, line of sight from governance into operations, but we just also respect their independence to be able to come up with the best advice for us to then make a decision on later, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Leo, I suppose just a closing comment on that kaupapa is, I think this for us was an example, a live example of the different perspectives of what partnership looks like and how it might play out too.
Yep.
Yeah, and if I just one final point on this one. It is about relationships. It is really about that. And central governments and others can lay down the policies and the legislation, and then our rules that come from that. But where the rubber hits the road is how we relate to our communities of interest. That's where it starts from. And so this is probably where we're at, is understanding that translation on the ground, and that's where it all happens. Then it works its way up in an ordered way.
So we're going to delve into a bit of detail around the recommendation around the committee. As a comment leading into that, I just wanted to talk about the question of significance. So Te Tatau were very clear to me and to the working party that they did not wish to be sort of duplicating the council's functions and roles, that it was focused on things of significance to Te Arawa. And of course, that's going to be nuanced, and it's going to have to be constantly reviewed. And they might not get it right every time, and then would realise that something actually does have significance. So this is a fluid process, but I think it was really important to note that in looking ahead to a way in which this relationship could manifest itself at a committee table, it would be based on a trigger, a set of triggers or mechanisms whereby at a very early stage, Te Arawa, both themselves and particularly through Te Tatau levels of engagement, would be allowed and empowered to be signalling very clearly, this is an issue of significance to us, or it's likely to be. We want to be involved at a higher level of engagement than we might otherwise on other issues. Now, the Council's got its significance and engagement policy, so it's already reflecting the fact that you run your ruler over this every time you make decisions about engagement with Te Arawa. So again, there's lots and lots of commonality here, but I think the partnership agreement can do with a refresher in this sense, to make sure that there are appropriate triggers and mechanisms right across the organisation to reflect that this is a matter of significance to Te Arawa. So we've given some ideas of how that might operate in the report, and some of them, quite a few of them are operational, so I'm going to leave them there. But it was a precursor comment heading into the structural idea of a vision, Te Arawa Vision 2050 committee. Can I just say that the name that we're referring to this as is yet to be determined. There's a whole wānanga or discussion to be had around naming things, but there has been a reference to the idea of a committee, which could be a committee of the whole, established to embed essentially the Te Arawa 2050 vision. The report at the very end captures a screenshot of the key page for me around the 2050 vision that Te Arawa set out around its visions of rangatiratanga and mana, and the idea of a Te Arawa 2050 Vision Committee, or if we can just call it, say, the Vision Committee for short, has been endorsed by the members of the Working Party on both sides as being a real positive, visible manifestation of the relationship. So we're at the point in the agenda whereby, and there's been comments as I go through which is really positive, whereby we wanted to table formally the recommendation from the Working Party about this committee, and to have people engage on it. I know you've read the draft report, so it's got the principles and the rationale behind it. Can I just say before we open the floor up that there is the devil's in the detail. So there has been work already on draft terms of reference, and there's been discussion around some practical measures as to how this might operate. But it's been important to come back to this workshop, which has been planned for some months, to allow the councillors and Te Tatau members to engage on the principle and how it might operate, and to ask some questions about it, so that that can inform the development of the terms of reference rather than presenting a fait accompli to you. So I hope it's going to be a useful exercise as we open up the kōrero about this. There are some precedent for this, so we've looked at many examples around the country. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council has a similar structure. There are other councils also who are adopting and have adopted successful models like this, and it's recommended that the committee would be one of the whole, a committee of the whole, that it would consist of membership of all of the council plus 4 Te Tatau representatives, and that there be the committee be charged with deciding matters that come through to it based essentially on that trigger I was talking about. What are matters of significance to Te Arawa? So it would be with that particular focus. I'm going to set out 3 topics that I'm just going to throw up in the air now, and they might either be part of a discussion you want to have or not, but I think these 3 topics are worthy of consideration in a workshop when we're talking about the council committee idea. Topic number 1, what are your views on the status of the committee in terms of it being either recommendatory or decision making? So that's a topic that the Working Party members have discussed at length, and it's fair to say there is not a shared view on that. There is a preference from Te Tatau that this committee have decision-making authority. There there is as the other committees of the whole in the council do, there is a response, a well-considered response from the members of the Working Party for the council that there are practical and potentially legal issues associated with that proposal. So it's something I think that I wanted deliberately on the table because it's important to wānanga and discuss that out. The second issue is how might a council of the whole, like this Vision Council, intersect with the other committees of the whole. So personally, I would welcome the expertise of the councillors in particular and their staff around that, because you're right there seeing as each council operates and the way in which its various jurisdictions operate. So if you're going to add a third committee of the whole into the mix, I think a useful question is to be thinking at a governance level, how would that work, both practically and philosophically. And the third topic, I think that would be useful to guide the terms of reference development, would be some of the practicalities. Like, what would you feel as governors would be an appropriate frequency of meeting if a council was to establish this committee of the whole? The idea of co-chairs has been mooted. Does that ring true to the idea of mana orite? So a chair from Te Tatau and a chair from the council operating. The question of venues was a really interesting one. Where might the committee sit? And there was a suggestion, for instance, that it might have a bit of a roving ability to not have to sit in the council chambers, but be seen to be sitting out in the community and be accessible to the Te Arawa community. And I can go on, but generally speaking, a heading around processes. Like, this is exciting and novel, but it also comes with a chance to think, how could you craft this vehicle in a way that really captures the vision for how your relationship should manifest itself. And so some of the internal processes of how the committee might operate, I think is worthy of discussion. Now, on that third topic, I think a lot of the detail is best coming from those who have been grappling with this already. So members of the Working Party obviously have done a lot of thinking about it. And I'm trying to find a balance to make sure that you, as councillors and other members of Te Tatau who haven't been part of the Working Party, feel you're engaged fully in what's been proposed. So looking at those three again, and there may be others, the decision-making versus recommendatory question. Secondly, the interrelationship between this proposed committee of the whole with the other committees that are in existence at the moment, jurisdictionally, if you like, and practically. And thirdly, some of the questions around processes and the way it might be visible to the community. Some ideas on that would be, I think, really fruitful. I come to you, Trevor.
Thank you for laying that out, Leo. Actually, what I'd like to hear is, I don't know Te Tātau's position yet on, I hear it's going to come forward or something, but to me, good thank you to the Working Party for the work you've done already. But it's just that if we can get the views from you, how you feel in that, because for me, I really want to know, having been involved in the first Te Arawa Standing Committee for 20 years, and then what has been set up that we've had for the last 9 or 10 years, and to see if this recommended new committee is going to be better or backwards. I want to wait and hear from the people on that one.
Mr. Chair, if I can just follow up on Trevor very quickly. Yes, this particular document, Te Arawa 2050 Vision, sets it out for Te Arawa. And I say the hand on heart because of the process that it went through, the rigour of it, and the historical nature of going back to first points of origin right through to now in a contemporary society and laying out the directions for Te Arawa. So I'll put that on there. It's a holy grail from my point of view in the context of any document that exists around Te Arawa's future. So I can be challenged on that, but that's certainly my position, and I believe the position of Tata o Te Arawa as well. Having said that, the question then comes, how is it best translated into council operations in a partnership regime? Because it has been reflected in your future development strategies, and it's there through your planning documents and so forth, and we acknowledge that. And then the question then becomes, how do you actually manifest that in the application? From our point of view, and looking at the structure and putting forward a committee structure that recognises the intent and the integrity and the power of this particular document in terms of sharing it. Our preference is for it to be, and that's certainly in my experience, a committee of the whole. And I say that from my own personal experience as being a regional council in Bay of Plenty that has a committee Māori. And just by way of history, I mean, that particular council is a tuakana, if you like, of Māori wards, set under its own legislation. And I remind us that one of our councillors around this table, Maureen Waka, was the champion for it in 1996. And that's how it became part of its own legislation under John Kenney. And so that was a very powerful position to start. Having said that, the question is, how do you empower a structure like that? So a committee Māori was formed in about 2006, I think it was, might have been a bit later. But actually was rather, and I heard this word just recently, rather toothless. And therefore, basically, its position had to be altered. And it wasn't until, I guess, my first term in the Triennium in 2018-19, I think it is, that it was actually elevated to a committee of the whole. So all council members around that table. Is it operationally well? Yes, it is. It is working well. It's working in the context that the Māori voice can actually be heard, considered on a parallel with other committees of council. And each of those committees do have an understanding, because they are committees of the whole, of what's going on. So they can interrelate across that paradigm. And therefore, it then makes recommendations to the council. And I emphasise the word recommendations because at the end of the day, councils have the power to make the ultimate decision. So our inputs in that particular, so that's just from an experience point of view. The tono was put out by the Working Party to have a presentation on how that committee Māori worked. Regional council replied, but it ended there, didn't carry forward. I guess timelines were rather restricted. So that particular model works, and I would argue that that's probably not a bad case study in the context of its localism, its context of whether it works or not. It's surviving really, really well and putting well. So I just wanted to make that start, just to put something in reflect of what you're saying, Trevor. We can talk all day about partnerships, and that's just a word until you implement it on the ground. And this is a particular structure that can actually help facilitate that, and I would put that forward on behalf of Tātou Aotearoa as a starting point. And therefore, I note that it has been put before the council on the possible structures. How that might work is another matter, but I've just put on the table that that is a sense of a pragmatic working start by reflecting on things that do work and things that don't work, and I would argue that in that case, it is working to date. It has its moments, but it is working. To hear from council, actually, because said enough.
Thank you. I think one of the key issues that we've faced in the past has been around the recommendatory or decision making. So when we had the previous committees with Te Tātou Aotearoa members on, and I remember very clearly when we set it up, and that because they were not elected members of council, it had to be recommendatory. And so then any decision by that entire committee then had to be also put through the full council. And so you had to double stamp it, which also meant time delays and some confusion at times, well, significant confusion at times for the community if at the committee level something was passed, but then at the council level it was then voted down. And we also had our community board members on there as well, so up to 4 members who weren't elected to council. So I'm not too sure if it would be possible, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, on whether the committee would be able to be decision-making per se in terms of making full and final decisions. So that's just from our history, what we had to do in the past here at the Rotorua Lakes Council. But I do acknowledge that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council and how forward-thinking and advanced they were in setting up that committee, and also the Māori wards at the time. And I do look at that committee as having great benefits. So I'm most interested in and open-minded to exploring what a new committee could look like with us all together. And then perhaps, well, I've got the mic as well. In terms of how does it integrate with other committees, my personal opinion on it would be that most likely recommendations should just go straight to council, because I think it might just get a little bit complicated trying to decide, does it go to our Community and District Development Committee or Infrastructure and Environment? Sometimes the kaupapa could be intermingled. So just having, so in terms of your second question, how does it integrate? Just going in any recommendations or actions from that committee going straight to council. And then potentially on point 3 around the processes and visibility, I think this is a great opportunity to get out into the community. So if our iwi and hapu were open-minded to it, I see it as a fantastic opportunity to be able to have hui on their marae or in their spaces where they, number one, may feel more comfortable to come along, but also more easily accessible. And there could be an opportunity to particularly discuss the issues or the aspirations of those particular hapu, marae or whānau. So I think that is a great opportunity there. And in terms of frequency of meetings, I do know we've got many hapu and marae, so how we choose where to go we'll have to tackle that challenge when it comes. But I'm open-minded to it. I'm also mindful that all of us have many different commitments, so perhaps quarterly, but then with the issue of knowing that we have many hapu and marae, we may need to do extra if there is a urgent concern or need that they wish us to meet. So I suggest quarterly as a starting point, but am open-minded. And yeah, actually, perhaps I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
If I can add to that, Mr. Chair, as a working model, yes, we do have alternate meetings on marae, then back into the council buildings and marae council buildings, and we choose, we put it out there what maraes might be chosen, because it is recommendatory, but the emphasis really is on the committee of the whole. So all councillors around that table are invited to be around that table, so it's a committee of the whole. So there's always a translation and any recommendations made of what's happening over here, what's happening over there, and then you come to some agreement around, okay, we can modify our recommendations based on commentary because it is a committee of the whole. And I think that's the critical issue. It's not a subcommittee that's subdued below another committee. It is actually a committee of the whole, therefore it translates as having some mana, and therefore the recommendations that go forward to the council presume that councillors have had input into it in order to make that final recommendation, which the decision is then made by the full council. And so I think that sort of gives some protection in that space, but it allows also the mana of Te Arawa to be expressed in that particular key moment and translated to final decisions that council may wish to make, but informed by councillors being part of it, as well as tātou in that space, galvanising appropriate recommendations as appropriate. So I tautoko what you're saying, Your Worship. It's really, really important that the structure that we have has that sense of mana. Ultimately, obviously, there will be those that say, no, we want to be around that council table, we want to be making the decisions, but there are legislative requirements that need to be observed. For Te Arawa, it's more important that we have our voices carried to the table in the decisions that are made.
So I'm just going to encourage the councillors in particular to just share your views. And just before doing so, on the second point, thank you for your going through them. You respond this question of interrelationship. You responded that it would be directly through to the council, which I completely understand. I was, I guess, thinking of maybe it's the curse of the lawyer, but thinking of the worst case scenario, where well, not worst case scenario, but other committees are dealing with subject matter that is adjacent or potentially overlapping in an environmental sense, or and how we can ensure that a committee like that, as proposed, can effectively be operating, but also respectful of the other fora in which a similar sort of issue might be discussed. So totally understand the way in which the committee would operate heading upwards to the council, but I'm also interested in exploring the lateral relationship committees that that are in place. Do you see what I mean? Kia ora.
Oh, thank you. For me, I think if we're looking at what are we actually trying to achieve, what are the issues that are happening within council that are impacting on iwi that we want to try and improve. And I mean, I think the Tarawera sewage scheme is a perfect example. The only way that the iwi had to engage in that was cultural impact assessments, and then nothing, and then later there might be a submissions. The whole point of Te Tato was to try and make these processes better. I agree that we want this committee to. I feel like it's got to be recommendatory because we've run into too many issues. So we'd want this committee to be able to modify recommendations. What will that probably look like? It's mainly going to be around infrastructure and consents, which is the main issues that impact iwi. So quarterly is just not going to be quick enough to be able to engage iwi on infrastructure and consents, to be able to get feedback in time to be able to modify recommendations for council decision making.
I think, kia ora Leo, kia ora tātou. I think it's going to come down to really the ability to assess what is, we need some kind of criteria or, like triggers, I think you mentioned, Leo, around what is a kaupapa nui ki a te Arawa, what maybe isn't. Being able to identify those particular kaupapa quickly and efficiently, that's the only way really you're going to do it, because there are sometimes, it's a capability thing too. Sometimes things may not seem that they have much of an impact. And then Te Tato comes along and says, well, hang on. Yes, it does. So yes, infrastructure, consenting stuff, but there's a whole raft of kaupapa tourism, that are going to be pulled out that align with the vision, because I'm thinking the vision is going to be the anchor for this committee that I'm very supportive of, by the way, and I think that's the part really that needs to be nutted out. And I think you've mentioned it, maybe it's going to come through the terms of reference type kaupapa and the relationship that committee will have with certain operational things that Andrew will have to get his head around and see if it works for all parties. So, kura no tāku, kia ora.
Let's just keep the kōrero going.
Can I get out?
I'm just going to. Sorry, I was wanting to. Oh, I thought I heard something and then you were about to start. I just didn't want to cut you off.
There's just a point that I have a little bit of a concern around. We only can talk about the governance, not the operations. When you're talking about vertical scaffolding to make this work, that is operations. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about consents, as operations, we don't have anything to, as governance, we don't have anything to do that, which is what Councillor Wing is just saying. But if we don't talk about that in this space, there's actually no point in having a governance team that's just going to be hearing the same information as the other two committees, because you can only make the same decision. The whole point is that there is what's missing in the scaffolding for the other two councils is what Te Tato can bring. So sure, it's just not going to work if we're only talking about governance. We can't talk about that vertical scaffolding that needs to happen to ensure that this Te Tato committee can help modify recommendations.
So just to clarify, no, I endorse that. I think the report shows that operationally there's a lot of energy that's gone in by the working party to those aspects. I wasn't trying to muzzle anyone. We were just trying to focus the short time we have today around this proposal at the governance level, but giving you the assurance that it will only be successful if that scaffolding of engagement is there.
Hence my comments around the capacity and the capabilities of all parties.
Absolutely. And I would just note, when you said there's a gap there with the other committees, my hope, and what I could see from the Working Party, their hope, was that the scaffolding engagement we're talking about operationally would actually be assisting all of the committees. So this isn't a separate channel only up to feeding this new proposed committee, but would actually have benefits across the board. Yeah.
Do you taru this committee of the whole, similar to what you're saying, Bay of Plenty Regional Council? Does that mean we have to go through some legislative process to get something similar? Because come the next election, it might be changed and all that kind of thing.
No, there's no legislative change required.
So that never happens. It's business as usual.
Yeah, the council can make that decision.
That's it.
Through you, Chair, Leo. Te Taro, how is the agenda set in that environment? How do you, what's the process, I guess, the triggers of where the work?
In the case of the regional council, of course, the Māori board members get together and set the agenda. They set the agenda, and that agenda is shared with all the rest of the councillors. Then they can add to, modify, or whatever. But it's done. This is how it works within the regional council. The Māori ward members set the agenda. They are the operational staff, support them in critical issues that need to be added to the agenda, so the operations feed into that, and that's where the critical juncture happens. You know, what are the critical issues on the ground? Raise them up, put them on the agenda in terms of priority. Māori ward members get together and say to the operation, yeah, that sounds good. Or that committee group says, that sounds good. Good, we'll put it to the main committee, council. So it's fed by the operations about issues on the ground.
I think the Working Party would regard, so that's a good model, but that's where the model is just that. But the Te Tau and the Working Party members from Council saw Te Tau being fully involved in that. So as almost like a operational secretariat, if you like. So that's what I talk about, vertical engagement. So that it's not that the first time you all get together is the 4 Te Tau members and members of the committee from council there at the table, but there is an underpinning of that. Now, the question of where authority...
Can I just make a quick comment before it leaves my mind?
Please.
Just when I was talking about the capacity stuff, I view this committee as not being just able to identify the things that are kaupapa that are happening within council to be on the agenda, but also the other way around. So Te Tau o Te Arawa might be aware of a few things that maybe council are not,
yes, and
might have impact on other decisions made in the other committees. Don't know, but is that your...
I totally would endorse that. Yep.
So I just want to get clear.
Can I just modify?
Two-way.
So I was just going to say, though, so picking up on that, and probably even more because of your comment, Councillor, there will need to be a definitive process of where the buck stops, though. So I can see streams of valuable information coming in, but we also are thinking in the terms of reference that there would have to be absolute clarity as to, once a thing gets on the agenda and is decided to be on the agenda, again, let's think worst case scenario, what if somebody had disagreed that the thing should be on the agenda? How do we deal with that? So that's part of the nuts and bolts to make it work successfully. Sorry.
As well, that in fact, in terms of the operational feed into the regional councillors is via the operations that we have within the institution. We don't have a similar partnership that we've got here with the Lakes Council. We have Māori ward systems, the constituency members. When we hold the meetings in Te Marae, we find out what the critical issues are in that jurisdiction, in that particular ward, and that is fed into the agenda. In this particular case, I would expect that Tātou would actually identify the critical issues that are out there for Te Arawa and feed it into the agenda. That's how I would see this operating.
Andrew?
Look, I think the purpose of all of this kōrero is to feed into whoever's got the unenviable task of going away and writing up these terms of reference. So with the view of contributing towards that, I think just to pick up on a couple of points from Councillor Waru, which have also been mentioned a couple of times. So a couple of thoughts for me is this idea of it being two-way, and I think that's really important because from an operational perspective, what would be extremely helpful is being able to have that two-way conversation to go. It's not just things that your council business that impacts Te Arawa, but also council business that we really need help from Te Arawa for. And I think in terms of Vision 2050 and partnership, that's where the opportunity is to be really impactful and demonstrate the value of the partnership. The other thing I'd say is just on infrastructure, I think we don't put in resource consents very often. Right? These are huge pieces of work, and I think if it's if there's plenty of visibility about when that's coming, the opportunity to input into that is going to be available. I just don't want to make people worried that if you don't meet every month, you're going to miss resource consent because we're putting in yes every month. I think the point about some of these major projects is one that's broader than just Te Tatou and Te Arawa. There's broad recognition that council needs more visibility about what we're doing on infrastructure projects and when consents go and what the conditions, etc. are. So I'm taking that on board, and that all of the committees of council will get more of a headline view on that. So I just my encouragement is don't create a rod for your own back and say you need to meet every month, otherwise you're going to miss something important. There are ways of programming work and giving you visibility so that the committee does have time to consider those things, make the comments. So I guess those are my 2 points I'd feed into the discussion to then go away and write up the terms of reference. Thank you.
Just to add to that too, sorry, but it's just as a former member of Te Tatou, I know how difficult it was for a member to attend something every month on end, and it was difficult. This way we get to control it, together, control the agenda there and make it more, I suppose, easier, I'll say, for people in Te Tatou to attend. Different for councillors. This is our mahi. Te Tatou, they have other mahi. And so I think this is a good way to sort of be able to program, as you said, program things in. This wena noku whakaro, kia ora.
So can I just table a comment with that in mind, and conscious very much so that I don't want an answer that delves into operations, but simply reflects the fact that as part of the terms of reference and the ongoing mahi, the implications on resourcing, I think, has been identified in the report as being really critical. If it's going to happen, it's got to be given the wings to fly. So I think that there would be, Andrew, a work stream that runs parallel with the terms of reference to make sure that what are the implications for resourcing, and that there's real transparency to the council about that, so that when you are making a decision on this, you can see the resourcing implications really clearly.
Sorry, Leo, just while I'm at it, I know. I hope the Vision Committee where you're referring to now, is that the only kaupapa we're going to traverse today, or?
It doesn't have to be. The idea was that was the key aspect of the recommendations that we were hoping to engage with the councillors on, but I'm not here to stop other take. Why don't you tell me what you're thinking as another topic, and then we decide whether it's going to be the forum or not.
Oh no, I'm just harking back to some of those things that were laid out right at the start of the process. Around there was also talk about the resource management committee and supporting Te Arawa to build its puna, I suppose, of commissioners, sure. Things like that. So
councillors will have seen that as part of the report, and a really important aspect of increasing the capacity and institutional knowledge within the council processes coming from Te Arawa around the Resource Management Act. There's been an endorsement from the Working Party members to strengthen that and to actually have a pool of those who are skilled within the Te Arawa community to contribute to that. So that is definitely a recommendation that's tabled for your favourable consideration. Right.
Couple of further questions. Thank you. One is through you. Taru, how often does this committee meet? The Owanepe Plenty Regional Council, the Maori Committee?
It meets quarterly.
Quarterly?
It meets quarterly, but we do have instruments to meet on need as well, which gets down to the point that we should mention.
Oh, I see. Okay. Kapai, and sorry to hear that people have felt that Te Tato have been toothless. It hasn't been in my eyes. Kia ora.
Yeah, I guess it's important that this is resolved because the longer it goes on, it does impugn the mana o Te Arawa, particularly not just inside the institution but outside as well. And we start getting potential comments like that. And it's a measure of people's feelings about progress and how are we reflected given the Vision 2050. So you'll get that. We want to stop any conspiracy theories that might be out there around that by being more progressive and on board with the council in a productive way. And so I do believe that this particular committee of the whole is an important insert. Whatever else happens beyond that, I think it's an important one to really show that there's meaning behind this. In the context of the other committees and other things like that, yes, that's on the table for discussion. But those are matters too that can actually be pulled through the committee Māori in time. You know, those are decisions that can be made as recommendations to committees of the whole, but we're trying to put it on the table now for early consideration. So that is there on the agenda as I see it. Jude, you want to comment on that?
Just wouldn't mind commenting on the frequency of the meetings, and I really heard what Lani said. And I think, Leo, you closed it off by saying that it really needs to be resourced appropriately. The last thing Te Tato wants and Te Arawa wants is just a committee meeting every 3 months. I mean, what's the point? What's the point? We've had structures. Well, Te Arawa have had structures within local government previously that have been a massive failure. They just haven't worked, and in the establishment of Te Tato o Te Arawa, I think this was seen as a real way to actually establish something that was meaningful, and where Te Arawa could with absolute certainty input into the decision making in local government. So I've got this sort of excitement, also with a measure of dread almost, that the beast of local government will again, as Lani said, take the fore, and there'll be a 3-monthly meeting set up for the purpose of meeting 3-monthly. But Leo, I think you qualifying it with making sure that it's resourced, that things that come out of this committee have got legs and they go somewhere and they're actioned. And I mean, Te Tato is working closely with Te Arawa Lakes Trust, so it's a time of opportunity and change. And I think if we really get this right and put effort in, I think we can really make something meaningful work here.
Aroha, my mathematics is wrong. It's every 2 months. I, as a Kura constituent, get 2 meetings in a year, and there are 3 of us, so it's one meeting every 2 months. Is it? So my maths was wrong. Apologies.
Trevor, can I just on that? There was a question of resourcing, a question of the thing having legs, so the idea of it actually having mana in terms of its implementation. I would just add the third one there for me, and that is the scaffolding. So that's the early engagement right the way through the community, in other words, the council's community. So I really think that's critical. I know we're not delving into the details of that here, but you can't be talking about the thing at the top of the decision-making chain unless there's real recognition that it will only work if it infiltrates right the way through. And that has implications for resourcing, obviously. But I wanted to add that as a rejoinder. Now, let's not get too tied up in how often, but it's probably just enough for us to hear this. This has been good. An idea of make it regular enough to actually be meaningful. I think it's better to be based on some principles. Every 6 months is an example at the Bay of Plenty. Every 2 months.
2 months. Your maths is wrong too.
Every 2 months. An idea also of don't make it so onerous. So there's other messages coming there. If you make it too onerous, you know, you run out of puff. So all of that's going on. I cut you off there, Trevor. Sorry about that.
Sorry, just seeking some clarification, Leo, probably from Uncle Taru. Every two months, did you say the hui? But what's still with those, with the being able to pull those levers if you needed to have a special hui in between somehow.
Oh, that's counted. You know, I mean, it happens with other committees on special issues and urgent issues. The same thing would apply. But generally speaking, we usually 2 months, every 2 months, there's a change of venue just to make sure that the constituency across the bay is included.
Andrew's just got a question.
Oh, so just to Taro on that, sorry, I was confused. I thought you were saying you get 2 meetings a year. So is it not a committee?
No. One meeting every 2 months.
Okay,
so
and that's a committee of the whole as well?
That's a committee of the whole, and it's rotated. And you can either be in attendance, and these days by Zoom as well. Preferably when it's on the marae, we prefer people to be there, because that's where you hear the people really responding back. We would normally bring in presentations from them to update us on what is happening in your rohe, what are the critical concerns. That's where you get the really meaty stuff coming through, but also you get the really, not saying that's not positive, but you get a lot of rangatahi coming in and also presenting their views on where everything is going as well. So it's very productive.
Yeah, so just in context, so just to think about resourcing it and people attending, if you have a meeting frequency of a committee of the whole that big, whether you look at, again, for the terms of reference group, is whether you look at quorum, because if you have a high quorum with that number of attendees, don't know what that means for your quorum. And then the other thing, just in perspective, is our audit and risk committee, which is pretty significant, meets every quarter. So it's just in terms of resourcing, it's an important thing to think about.
I guess that needs to be worked through. You know, Andrew, I think the reality is what works for both parties in the best, most effective and efficient way is the detail that needs to be figured out. But I think the signals are on the table about resourcing for that. The quorum is important as well. So that is there. And so we work as per required, I guess, under regulatory regimes, but appropriate regimes that can be enough crunch behind it to be able to make recommendations that stick.
You can have a review process too around terms of reference. So if the thing is up and running and it's proven to be too onerous, or the other way around, we're not meeting enough, you've got to allow mechanisms for you to revisit that. Also, I heard from Te Tatau, if there was to be an allocation of resources, you know, because there's limits to that, I'm hearing that they would be in favour of resources going into engagement operationally and vertically to make sure that by the time a committee like this has been done. So when we're talking about how often we meet, it's going to be critical to make sure that the other underpinnings of this thing are effective. Kia ora.
I think so. I just want to talk about that. I support 2 monthly meetings of the governance committee as long as operationally the resourcing is there to ensure the capacity to engage weekly with iwi if need be on these kaupapa before that, those 2 monthly meetings. But one thing around the practicalities, it's already been raised, the issues for Te Tatau members, it's been raised on both sides actually, issues that have been ongoing with attendance, and that's, I'll just highlight that in no way reflects on the amazing work that was done by Te Tatau representatives on council, but it has been raised that it's difficult when you've got work obligations to be able to attend. And I've heard in the past Te Tatau members say it's a pity that others couldn't sub in to meetings because the council structure says it has to be 2 or 4. If there's going to be 4, it has to be the same 4. And if one of those is absent, another Tatau member can't come in and change that. And I don't know what the rules are within local government that that stressed that, but it's an issue that needs to be looked at. Is there a possibility that could be changed, and if somebody can't make it, or even if there's a kaupapa that someone's a specialist in, could they come in and represent Te Tatou on that kaupapa because that's their background? Just something to think about in terms of the practicalities.
I just think in terms of this committees, Lani and Tikata, I think it was more about because it was a person who was appointed to the committee, not a entity or as such. I think that was the issue, if I recall.
I think our view was about 4 members from Tatou on the committee of the whole, which means that there was, so it's not an onerous one for a group of 14 representatives to select 4 to be in attendance at any point in time. So I don't think that would be such a difficult issue around attendances.
I'm worrying the way though, because I think there'll be it's an important point. Can I just maybe not?
I think that reflects the intention too. Sorry, Leah. No. Around the scope of the 4 and the rest of the council. It's not a numbers thing, it's just the ability to get their kōrero across. Ki ngā taringa whakarongo. And so that's the main thing. Also, I made a point in a meeting some weeks ago around the Te Arawa vision, and I'll just make that point today as well, is that there's absolutely nothing in that vision that wouldn't be good for the whole community. And I just sort of put that out there because there isn't. There isn't. And it was challenged at one of our meetings by one of our councillors, but I put that kōrero out there, and I will challenge anyone to try and find something that's not good in there for everybody. Kia ora.
I was going to not sort of pinpoint, but just encourage those who maybe haven't spoken up yet to have a say, or even just check in with you to see how we're travelling. I want this hui to be safe, whereby you can ask the hard questions as well, or say, actually, I don't agree with such and such, so that we get a real sense of coming out of the hui with a pathway forward. So, Councillor Fisher, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Leo, and thank you for all the comments so far. Definitely, I would support the having that committee as a whole, and I think having been a councillor on the previous term and the previous structure of having the 2 Te Tatou reps on each of the committees, kind of following on from what Councillor Kiriopa said, definitely not a reflection of their commitment, because as we all know, everyone has many other responsibilities and other commitments there as well, so often it is difficult for the attendance, but also I think we didn't get the full potential that I think that we could have from both sides through that previous structure. And I think having this new structure, and from what Leo said as well, leaving aside the how often the meetings meet and everything like that, but I think it will be a much more beneficial outcome with the committee as a whole. I do also want to touch on another comment I heard earlier around I think it's really important that we do have that clear line between operations and the governance, and even and with a committee like this as well. I think that would be very important, for the operational level to have that crossover and the governance level to have that crossover, but not the vertical crossover. And I think that's important for us to maintain that integrity as good governors, and for the operational to be able to have that independence as well to do their job, to follow the legislation and regulations that they need to follow. The question I do have is around, I guess on funding, because I know Te Tatou, we increased the funding for Te Tatou back in 2020 to about just over 370,000, I think, per annum. With the new structures, with the potential new structure, is there any talk or any thinking around if that could potentially change, or looking at any changes in that space?
I guess that's a valid question around resourcing the structure, because in fact what we deal with the attendance, I guess fees due, which are quite minimal, relatively speaking, and but the actual structure itself, how that's resourced in terms of its ability to operate, is the key question here. So I certainly understand, and thank you for your comments, Councillor.
Certainly through this process, it hasn't been discussed. Finances haven't been discussed.
I think maybe it will be worthwhile discussing as well, and just to be really transparent, we as a council have our own significant financial challenges dealing with inflation. The rates increase that we're taking out in our long-term plan, half of that is due to inflation. So we, as a result of the challenging times, not only for us, but the affordability for our community, we have looked at everything across the organisation and have had to make reductions, including to our community boards and to our community funding. So the $372,500, we would struggle to find any additional, and we have had to and may have to in the future as well, just really look at the efficiencies of that funding and how we can make sure that it is being used to the best ability. So I appreciate any committee or structural changes may change, but just signal that naturally, like we are seeing with the government and we are seeing with many businesses and we're seeing with many families, we may just have to have another conversation regarding that as well, to make sure that we are on both sides getting the best value for money and the resourcing, which we've already spoken about, that we do need.
Can I just add one comment to that? And that is that as part of those discussions, I hope that the council will be transparent around the contribution of Te Arawa towards the rates that fund this council, and how balanced that is in terms of what Te Arawa gets out of the amount of rates that the iwi actually pays. Thank you.
Also, through Leo, I think maybe we're cutting up the pie before it's even cooked. So maybe to me, is get out what we're trying to achieve, agree to first, and then we can talk about how we can find a way to resource that, and maybe some things have to change a little bit here and there to make it work. But the
question of resourcing has been tabled. It's really important. I did mention before, and I think Andrew agreed with me, that it was seen as a work stream to cost that out. Just a couple of thoughts for me. If you're thinking about a committee, I wouldn't see this as being duplicating work that's happening in other committees either. So, for instance, it may well be that there is a streamlining or a allocation of authority in that regard. So it may well be effective use of resources as well. Yeah, the question of resourcing is always tempered with budgets and all the other efficiencies that are required, along with the need to get beyond theory and actually make it work. And sometimes it needs it will need properly costed out thinking so the council can make a decision on this. Totally endorse that. So we were just inviting those who, not necessarily on your side. Karen, do you want to say anything?
Thanks, Leo. I've just been listening to all the conversation, which has been really helpful to understand everyone's viewpoints actually on this. And as has been highlighted, it's important that the Māori voice is heard alongside the other communities. And how do we empower the structure so that it actually holds the mana of Te Arawa in place while we do that. And it was interesting to hear the examples of how the agenda is set at the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, the inputs that come from various places, not just through council. That seems to be a great way to make sure that the right items are on the agenda that are of importance. I'm also mindful of the resourcing, and it's not just the dollars and cents, it's also the manpower, the people in our organisation, and how we make that work within the system that we have. Yes. Is also going to be a part of the process that we talk about. The structure and it being flexible enough to include the people that need to be there at the time or who can be at the time. It's important that it's flexible enough that Te Tatou can sub in and out if needs be, with the voices that need to be heard around the table. And I guess just mindful that whatever we do, we use the resources in council that we have already that are working, Te Amorangi unit and the GM of the Te Arawa partnerships, making sure that all those relationships and connections are used to their utmost to make this process work as well as possible too. And I'm also aware that there's other resources across the organisation that connect with mana whenua and iwi too. So it's going to be a process of looking at the way we work as an organisation as well as just this, not as well as this proposed structure. So there's a lot of work to do, and I know that we have new leadership in our new CEO, and he's taking a different approach to the way that we do things also. So there's a space of change, and so there's obviously a lot of work that can be going on at the same time to make this really fly, as somebody said. Thank you. Kia ora, Leo. Probably don't really need to comment too much. I think everything's probably been said here in the room. Councillor Barker and I have been on the working party since its inception. We've been to every single meeting. So I think that we've heard loud and clear the messages that we need to, and we've been part of the work stream to get it to this stage. And I think there are some things that still need to be progressed further. So I think it's really now just a matter of getting it in and up and operating and running. So I think that's really where we need to be getting to now, is that probably the time is we've done enough talking, and now we just need to get on and get this up and running. So probably don't need to say any more for now, and I assume that depending on where you go now with the next stages, that the working party will continue to work on the terms of reference going forward. Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, I'm going to move shortly to that agenda item to actually discuss that. And yes, it is basically exactly as you said. So let's just stay in this zone for a minute, just checking that we're... Councillor, would you want anything further to add?
I think there's the basis for something to work here. I think I hear that we've got pretty much agreement on the committee of the whole, with 4 members of Te Tatou. I've got in the back of my mind an agenda setting process. Currently we have agenda setting meetings, which are fairly informal with staff as to what the work program looks like. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I wonder whether there's an agenda setting committee of all of the chairs that meet on a regular to decide where the work programs sit, and I think it addresses, perhaps Lani's, that brings forward Te Arawa's view on certain items and where they might sit. So I think that's good. I think potentially that's a solution. In terms of frequency, I would lean towards more frequently, because there's a rhythm of things rather than perhaps quarterly. I realise there's the question of resourcing is one that will need to be considered, but what we tend to do in reality is if something's too expensive a project, we say we'll put it out or we won't do it. It's a bit of a fly by the seat of your pants, value for money. We're not say putting and we haven't got this on the agenda. I had an example of, I've lost it, but something that's small, it can be deferred. We don't need to deal with it. Lakes A zone has been deferred for way too long. You can do that in that agenda setting meeting, saying, okay, we see some value in that, we should put it in the work program and deal with the resourcing piece through the work of that particular committee. But look, I really think that this has been a really valuable conversation, and I think we've probably got the nub of something that will work. We look forward to the next step.
That's positive. Anyone else want to contribute? James.
Tēnā koe Leo. Just some quick fire comments from me. I've been really encouraged that the tone and the intent of the hui has not been looking for reasons not to establish the Vision Committee, rather than to have conversations and dialogue around what it could look like. Ka tahi, ka rua. Yes, I agree and acknowledge the importance of separating the governance and the operational, but in my humble opinion, they're not mutually exclusive of each other. In fact, they both rely on the efficient operations of each other to be able to function at their maximum capacity. In regards to the frequency of the hui, there's a phrase I use called doing the mahi before the hui. And it was referenced in regards to what operational support needs to be provided. In my opinion, the mahi before the hui is just as important as the hui itself. So the participants in the hui, whether they be from the Vision Committee or from the community, I believe need to be absolutely focused and informed and know what's going to happen when that hui happens, as opposed to necessarily rocking up their coal. So mahi before the hui. I think this is bigger than just a partnership. I think this is actually about a relationship between Te Tatou and the Council, and a relationship between Te Tatou, the Council, Te Arawa, and the wider Rotorua community. And if we can get this right, then I think it will strengthen our relationship, and particularly with Te Arawa. And finally, I endorse what Councillor Kaifong said. We're absolutely and 100% supportive of building this waka. We've had conversations about the design, what it will look like, but really keen to build the waka and then set it a sail. Tēnā tātou.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Leo. These are my last comments, but I want to go back to right at the beginning. You urged us to be frank and free with our discussions and that, and trust. I'm pleased to hear that it's moving soon to something in July. Can I be honest? Up to now, I've been very disappointed in, and Council knows this, I have raised this at our own meetings. I think they've heard me because it's gone on for too long. 18 months is too long. And I've felt for our people, and you've heard there was some mumai. Yeah, I've been feeling it too, because people are asking us, okay, we're working with the Maori wards, and yeah, well, we've got other issues to deal with there too as well coming up. And I'm also on the 9 protocol committees, and we have meetings on marae there, so we're hearing from our people. But this, if we work through on this, it'll help us get over that. And we've had 3 terms where we worked relatively well, but hopefully the new council of the whole and everything will be, and I asked that at the beginning, will it be better or will it take it backwards? I think it will be better. And to move on to the business as usual stuff, Te Tātou, who are only 100 metres down the road from us here, they've got a boardroom. We can meet there. There's resources that we can share. It's things like that that I think. And I just hope that in the future, when changes are made, and these ones here are changes that we've made, and yet it's taken so long. So having got that all off my chest and that, I think there's going to be good relationship built up. And thank you, Taru, because I think it benefits us that you are on the regional council as well, and they're also a partner in local government for us, and if we can work along side use as well. So, Leo, I thank you. Kia ora.
Just an invitation, you don't have to take it up. Now, rangatahi voice. Te kōrero tae.
Tēnā tātou, I've enjoyed listening to everyone's kōrero this morning. I suppose I want to go back to the whether or not we're able to make decisions. I think Tania spoke about how there's been experiences where things have been passed at a committee level and then voted down by the council. I think that's a direct and a clear indication of why it would be important for us to have decision-making powers. Are we setting this committee up to achieve and to kind of achieve impact at its fullest capacity if we don't allow them to have decision-making powers? Our whānau te iwi Māori are beyond a space of time where we are wanting to make recommendations and advice. We need response, we need intervention. That's where we're at. So I didn't want to stay quiet on that. However, I understand the legal complexities that come with actually achieving that. But if it is to be recommendatory, then I suppose the committee, the Vision Committee, has to be part of a collective of efforts that allow for iwi participation. So we've also asked for representation on the Resource Management Committee, representation in other spaces, the Audit Committee. So for this Vision Committee to work in its fullest capacity, I would, I know that extends beyond the agenda, but I still want to bring it to everyone's attention that this is a start of a collective of efforts that we are asking for. So I just my little
Bit hard to follow that, kōrero. 2050 vision. That's too far away. I'm actually looking at getting glasses so I can see a bit closer. But more importantly, what are the key components that we need to extract from that will give effect to a sustainable, developing and successful community? And Te Taru talked about there are aspects of that within that vision as well. So let's make that vision an active mahi for all of us. 2050, long time away. Bring it up closer. Kia ora.
My thinking is I'm in support of the committee having stronger decision-making than simply recommendation. I'd like to hear the voice of Te Tātou coming through all of the policies that RLC produce, which are relevant to Tātou Te Māori. In setting the agenda, I guess, well, I won't talk too much about the operational stuff. I think that others can talk about that, although I do accept that at that level, the principles of governance could flounder. So it's important that we have strong Te Tau presence at all of those levels as well.
All right. That was, yeah, I agree. A good tone of the hui. We're getting now to our, we've got a few minutes left just to look at next steps. So if you're okay with that, I'm going to move to that now. The question was asked on there, is there general approval for the working group to move forward with drafting terms of reference for this Vision Te Arawa Vision Committee? And one of those would be to come up with a name, a suitable name. And I am sensing that there is absolute approval for that mahi to continue and to continue fast. I'm going to propose, and it might sound a little bit presumptuous, but that I remain still involved in that process, but subject to the working party's view on this. Working with Andrew, we could furnish back to the working party a summary of this and the key aspects of what the detail would look like by way of terms of reference, circulate it in advance, and then have the working party meet and discuss on that with your feedback, with a view to finalising from a working party recommendation point of view the terms of reference both out to your respective rōpū, because of course you'll have to include then Te Tatau elected members on that, with a view, Andrew, just speaking in front of you, that Te Tatau would need to have enough time to be comfortable that when it goes to the council for its July hui, it itself is happy to endorse that as well. Now, that's going to take some real energy, and I'm certainly up for it, and I think we can achieve that with a view to taking, I think, a resolution, is it, to the council hui in what date? April. Sorry, July.
Sorry, I'm just, Deputy Mayor and myself, we're looking at our schedule of meetings. We're very mindful that our team are under quite significant time constraints right now. We'll have hearings, like a whole week of hearings soon, and then we need to approve our long-term plan, which takes us to the end of June. So in order for the report to be completed in time for the July meeting, it may be more practical to do the August meeting. Sorry, just given the significance workload of a long-term plan.
Okay, so look, let's not get bogged down on dates. That's really helpful to give an indication. But the message to me is let's get on with it and foot to the pedal, so that will happen.
In recognition, or can I just say this on behalf of Tatau, in recognition of the LTP and everything you're going through, I would certainly acknowledge that. I think as a deadline, we really need to meet that August target. Because I'm happy to, on behalf of Tatau, to extend it to August, so that we can actually get the grounds done well, let you get on with the business, and I know how intense that is with the LTPs, so we're going through that as well, so likewise. So I would hope that Tatau is happy to just anchor it on August meeting, and we come to that final resolution that's passed before the council, and the processes that our operations team can connect with and get the job done.
Look, on the basis that Leo spoke for me, might speak for him, to say that definitely you'll get updates in the meantime, so it won't be. So we'll work on a first draft. It'll go to the working party. We'll meet and discuss it, and then we go from there. Yeah.
I'm just assuming I'll be part of that workup.
Yep. Oh, sorry, Jude. Absolutely. Great intervention. That creates that balance there, as it has been with. So just so you knew, that's how we work with Gina and Jude all the way through. So my apologies. Almost got through the hui without a stuff up. So with that, I'm going to just suggest that we bring this to a close because we've reached our end. And before I hand it back over to our kaumātua, is that okay? Mia, everybody? Anything else?
No,
okay.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge and thank Your Worship the Mayor and the councillors for hearing us out today. It's been a long journey. I regard this as a journey of healing, and as we move forward beyond August, a journey of real positive, constructive, working together to get the things done for the betterment of our community at large. And of course, from Te Arawa's perspective, we're totally behind that, Andrew. Kia ora.
just want to thank you too, Leo. Toka haki te whakahaere te hui nei. So, tēnā koe. It's been a long journey for you too. So, yeah, just wanted to acknowledge that and tātou katoa, kia ora. And I'm getting the nod, māku pēr hei whakakapi tātai koe. And one more little gem, I suppose, I'll leave for us is to remember, you know, let's not look at it at the scope up as it's easy to go and get bogged down in the costs and all that kind of stuff, but, you know, rather it's an uplifting of mana for both parties. So let's look at it in a positive light like that. Kia inoi tātou. E honore he korore ki te atua he maunga rongo ki te whenua he whakaaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa āmine. Hanga maira e te atua he ngā kouhou ki roto ki tēnā ki tēnō mātou. A rei tia mana ki tia mai mātou roto i ha mātou mahi katoa. E pae i hoa e orana e mana ana i ngā tau mutunga kore he korore ki tō ingoa tapu āmine.